Part 1. The Fall from Grace. The torrential rain slammed against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the Vaughn penthouse, mimicking the frantic, terrified beating of Maya's heart. In her hands she held a silver serving tray, her fingers trembling so violently the porcelain teacup rattled against the metal. For 3 years she had been the ghost in this mansion, quiet, hard-working and fiercely loyal. She knew exactly how Julian Vaughn liked his coffee at 5 a.m., how he tensed his shoulders when a corporate acquisition went south, and how, beneath his ironclad billionaire exterior, he carried the suffocating grief of a man who had lost his mother at a young age. In silence, Maya had committed the ultimate sin. She had fallen deeply, irrevocably in love with her employer. "Julian, darling, you cannot possibly let this go," a sharp, venomous voice cut through the quiet of the penthouse. Evelyn Montgomery, Julian's high society fiancée, stepped into the grand study, clutching a sleek black flash drive. Behind her, 2 corporate security guards stood like executioners. Evelyn's face was a mask of calculated horror. "The core source code for the new Vanguard AI tech, the very project you are launching tomorrow morning, was copied onto this drive. I found it hidden inside Maya's locker in the staff quarters." Maya froze, the blood draining entirely from her face. "Master Julian, though. That isn't true. I don't even have the security clearance to enter your private server room. I was only cleaning the library." Julian sat behind his massive mahogany desk, his sharp, aristocratic jaw clenched so tightly a muscle ticked in his cheek. His dark eyes, usually completely unreadable, burned with a mixture of raw fury and a devastating, deep-seated betrayal. He had trusted Maya. He had let her into his inner sanctum, believing her soft smiles and quiet presence were the only genuine things left in his cynical, hyper-competitive world. "The digital logs don't lie, Maya," Julian said, his voice dropping into a chilling sub-zero register that sliced right through her soul. He stood up, his towering figure casting a terrifying shadow over her. "The access card used to download the data was scanned at 2 a.m. Your shift log says you were the only one on this floor." "I was asleep in my room," Maya pleaded, tears finally spilling over her lashes as she dropped the tray, the porcelain shattering across the marble floor. She looked at Evelyn, who was watching her with a tiny, triumphant smirk. Maya realized with a sickening lurch that she had been perfectly, flawlessly framed. "Julian, please. Look at me. I have given years of my life to this house. I would never betray you." "Don't speak my name," Julian roared, the absolute pride of the Vaughn Empire flaring in his eyes. He couldn't see past the evidence. He couldn't see past the humiliating thought that the one person he had allowed himself to feel a soft emotion for had sold his life's work to his competitors. "You are nothing but a common thief. I won't call the police, only out of respect for your late grandfather's past service to my family. But you will leave this house tonight. You will leave with nothing." Without giving her a single chance to defend herself, Julian signaled the security guards. They grabbed Maya by her arms, dragging her through the grand hallways she had meticulously cleaned for years. Julian watched her go, his expression hardening into an impenetrable block of ice, burying his wounded heart beneath a fortress of corporate ambition. Maya was thrown out into the freezing rain, her meager belongings scattered into the gutters. Humiliated, broken-hearted and utterly ruined, she collapsed on the wet pavement. She pressed her hand against her stomach, a fresh wave of tears choking her throat. What Julian never knew, and what she had intended to tell him tonight before the nightmare unfolded, was that she was carrying his child. A secret heir, conceived during a single intensely passionate night of shared vulnerability 2 months ago when Julian had broken down in her arms. "We don't need him," Maya whispered into the dark, rainy night, her voice suddenly losing its timidity and hardening into a fierce, maternal resolve. "I will protect you. We will build our own world." Everyone believed the quiet Maid had disappeared into the shadows to live a life of poverty and disgrace. But far from the city of Vaughn, Maya was about to activate a legacy no one saw coming. Oh, my heart is absolutely aching for Maya. To be framed by a ruthless fiancé and publicly disgraced by the man you secretly love, and carry a child for, is the ultimate betrayal. Julian let his cold exterior and corporate pride completely blind him to Maya's innocence. But this Maid is about to show the world that she is far from helpless. What do you think Maya will do next to survive and protect her unborn son? Drop a comment below right now and let me know your thoughts. I want to hear all your predictions. If you are completely hooked and need to see Maya's glorious rise to power, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell right now. Part 2, The 7-Year Ascent. The cold rain of Vaughn City became a distant memory as Maya stepped off the train in the hypermodern tech hub of Sector 7. She was broken, but she was no longer defenseless. Just weeks after her exile, a legal notice arrived that shifted the trajectory of her life forever. Her late grandfather, a quiet man who had lived like a simple mechanic, had secretly been an early foundational patent holder for wireless data transmission. He had left her a dormant trust fund and an untapped portfolio of revolutionary tech blueprints. She didn't spend a single dime on luxury. Instead, she rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a noisy server repair shop, folded her maid's uniform away forever, and gave birth to a beautiful dark-eyed boy named Leo. Using her grandfather's foundational patents, the business strategies she had covertly absorbed while managing Julian's household libraries, and a fierce, unyielding maternal instinct, Maya founded Ethelgard Tech. She worked 18-hour days, rocking Leo with one foot while coding microprocessors with her hands. She learned the language of venture capitalists, ruthless corporate negotiations and global supply chains. She was no longer the timid girl who cleaned up broken porcelain. She became a silent predator in the tech industry, building an empire that specialized in next-generation cybersecurity, the very technology Julian's empire lacked. 7 years later, the top floor of the Vaughn corporate headquarters was buzzing with high-stakes tension. Julian Vaughn sat at the head of his massive glass conference table, looking visibly exhausted. The last 7 years had been incredibly lucrative, but his personal life was a hollow, suffocating wasteland. His marriage to Evelyn had been postponed indefinitely due to strategic adjustments, though in reality, Julian simply couldn't bring himself to seal the bond. The memory of the gentle maid he had thrown out into the rain still haunted him, an agonizing phantom ache that no amount of wealth could cure. "Julian, this is absurd," Evelyn hissed, sitting to his right, draped in expensive designer diamonds. "We shouldn't be begging this newcomer for a merger. The Vaughn Empire doesn't bow to startups." "It's not a startup, Evelyn," Julian snapped, his silver-flecked eyes flashing with dangerous impatience. "Ethelgard Tech has acquired 40% of our data infrastructure over the last fiscal quarter. If their CEO chooses to cut our server access, our entire automated network collapses by midnight. We don't have a choice. We listen." The double-frosted glass doors of the boardroom swung open. Julian stood up to greet the mysterious tech titan, but the words completely died in his throat. The entire room seemed to lose its oxygen. Walking into the boardroom with an unmatched, regal elegance was Maya. She wore a perfectly tailored midnight blue power suit that accentuated her sharp, confident posture. Her dark hair was styled into a sleek, flawless updo, and her eyes, once cloudy with tears and humility, were now piercing clear and cold enough to shatter glass. Behind her walked a team of 6 high-profile corporate attorneys. "Good morning, Mr. Vaughn," Maya said, her voice smooth, velvety, and carrying an absolute mountain-moving authority that caused Julian's heart to violently hammer against his ribs. "Maya?" Julian whispered, his hands gripping the edge of the glass table so hard his knuckles turned white. He couldn't believe his eyes. The timid maid he had discarded like trash had returned as the brilliant, untouchable monarch of the global tech market. Evelyn gasped, her face turning an unearthly, terrified shade of pale as she stumbled backward in her chair. You were a thief. How are you here?" Maya didn't even look at Evelyn. She simply took her seat at the opposite end of the polished boardroom table, crossing her legs elegantly as an attorney laid down a multi-billion-dollar acquisition contract before her. "Let's skip the nostalgia, Julian," Maya said, a chilling, brilliant smile playing on her lips as she looked straight through him. "We are here to discuss the survival of your company. And on this table I hold all the power." But as Julian stared at her, completely paralyzed by shock, his eyes inadvertently drifted toward the glass partition of the waiting room outside. Sitting on a leather sofa was a young 7-year-old boy playing with a tablet. The boy looked up, laughing at something his nanny said, and Julian's entire world shattered into a million pieces. The boy had his exact aristocratic nose, his dark, intense eyes, his unmistakable, defiant smirk. It was his son. The secret heir he never knew existed. Oh, the absolute brilliance of this reunion. Maya didn't just come back to play. She came back to rule across the very boardroom table where Julian thought he was king. The look on Evelyn's face was pure gold, and Julian has just realized that his arrogance didn't just cost him a maid, it cost him his own flesh and blood. How do you think Julian is going to react now that he's looking at his son through the glass? Drop a comment below right now and let me know your thoughts. I want to see all your theories. If you are living for Maya's ultimate corporate vengeance, smash that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell right now. Part 3. The Boardroom Confrontation. The air inside the boardroom turned entirely microscopic. Julian's gaze remained locked on the little boy standing by the doorway, his mind calculating timelines with frantic, terrifying precision. 6 years old. The dark curls. The silver-flecked eyes. The math was flawless, undeniable, and it struck Julian with the force of a physical blow to the chest. "Leo, sweetheart, wait outside with Uncle David for just a few more minutes," Maya said, her voice softening instantly as she turned to her son, entirely shielding him from Julian's intense, burning gaze. "Okay, Mommy." The boy gave a bright, cheerful nod and stepped back into the hallway, the frosted glass door clicking shut behind him. Julian slammed both palms onto the polished mahogany table, standing up so violently his leather chair skidded backward. "Maya, who is that boy?" "He is my son," Maya replied smoothly, not a single muscle in her elegant face twitching as she opened her tablet. "Now, if we could focus on the acquisition of Vanguard's logistics network." "Don't play corporate games with me," Julian roared, his billionaire composure fracturing completely, exposing the raw, bleeding wound beneath. He stormed around the long table, stopping just inches from her, his towering frame trembling with a chaotic mixture of fury, shock, and a sudden, desperate longing. "He has my eyes, Maya. He has my family's jaw. He is my son. He is my child," Maya corrected him, her voice dropping into a chillingly calm, razor-sharp whisper that cut deeper than any shout. She stood her ground, looking directly into the eyes of the man who had once broken her soul. "You lost the right to claim him the exact night you threw his mother out into a thunderstorm like a piece of garbage. Leo doesn't even know your name, Mr. Vaughn. To him, the hero of his life is my late grandfather, the man who actually stood by us when we had nothing." Evelyn, desperate to salvaging her collapsing world, stood up and pointed a trembling, manicured finger at Maya. "Julian, don't listen to her. She's using that child to manipulate you just like she manipulated your data 7 years ago. She's a thief who got lucky with an inheritance." Maya didn't even look at Evelyn. Instead, her lead legal counsel, a towering man with a ruthless reputation, stepped forward and slid a thick manila folder across the table toward Julian. "Actually, Mr. Vaughn," the lawyer stated calmly, "while conducting our due diligence for this merger, our global intelligence team uncovered the original digital footprints from the security breach 7 years ago. It appears the IP address used to frame Ms. Miller did not belong to the Maid's quarters at all. It belonged to a private server registered directly under the name of Montgomery Holdings. Specifically, the personal laptop of Miss Evelyn Montgomery." Julian froze, his gaze slowly shifting from the file to Evelyn's face. Evelyn's jaw dropped, her skin turning an unearthly, terrified shade of gray as she took a panicked step backward. The truth had finally surfaced. The frame job that had destroyed their love, cost him his son's childhood, and turned his life into a cold, hollow nightmare was sitting right in front of him on a piece of paper. Oh, the absolute, scorching truth has officially been unleashed. Evelyn's toxic web of lies has been completely dismantled across the boardroom table, and Julian finally realizes the catastrophic mistake his pride caused 7 years ago. He didn't just throw away a maid. He threw away his entirely innocent soulmate and his only son. How do you think Julian is going to exact revenge on Evelyn, and what will he do to try and earn his way back into Leo and Maya's lives? Drop a comment below right now and let me know whose side you are on. If you are completely obsessed with this emotional warfare, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. Part 4. The Price of Absolute Pride. The boardroom felt like an active blast zone. Julian picked up the manila folder with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the digital forensics report. Every log, every IP address, and every timestamp pointed to a single horrific reality. Evelyn had orchestrated the entire breach from her personal laptop, using her high-level access to manipulate the server logs and frame the quiet woman he loved. Julian slowly turned his head toward Evelyn. The corporate armor he had worn for 7 years completely shattered, replaced by a terrifying, unadulterated fury that made his silver-flecked eyes burn like dry ice. Julian, please listen to me," Evelyn stammered, her voice high and frantic as she backed toward the glass doors. "The company was vulnerable. I did it for us. I did it to protect your legacy from someone beneath your status." "Get out," Julian said. His voice wasn't a roar. It was a low, guttural whisper that carried the weight of absolute ruin. "Julian. I said get out." Julian thundered, slamming his fist onto the table so hard the glass surface vibrated. "Vanguard Tech terminates all contracts, all shares and all associations with Montgomery Holdings effective immediately. If your face is seen on any property owned by my family ever again, I will personally ensure the district attorney uses this file to put you behind bars for the rest of your life." "Guard." 2 stone-faced Vaughn security guards stepped into the room, gripping Evelyn by her designer sleeves. In a beautiful twist of poetic justice, she was publicly dragged out of the executive suite, her frantic screams of protest fading down the hallway until there was nothing left but silence. Julian stood panting, his shoulders slumping as the absolute weight of his 7-year mistake crashed down upon him. He turned back toward Maya, his eyes raw, bloodshot and filled with a devastating, soul-crushing regret. Slowly, the powerful, untouchable billionaire sank to his knees right there on the polished boardroom floor, dropping his head in front of the woman he had betrayed. "Maya. I am so sorry," Julian choked out, his voice cracking with an agony he had never allowed himself to feel before. "I was blind. I let my arrogance and my paranoia ruin the only real thing I ever had. I don't care about the company, I don't care about the merger. Punch me, ruin me, take every dollar Vanguard owns. But please let me know my son. Let me beg for your forgiveness." Maya stood perfectly still, looking down at the man who had once held absolute power over her life. Her face remained a calm, unreadable mask, but a single quiet tear escaped her eye, tracing down her cheek. She didn't mock him. She didn't celebrate her victory. She simply remembered the cold rain, the wet pavement, and the 7 years of sleepless nights she had spent building an empire to protect their child. "Standing up from your knees is easy, Julian," Maya said softly, her voice carrying the deep, unshakable strength of a mother. "But earning the trust of a little boy who thinks his father abandoned him? That is a battle you cannot win with a corporate checkbook." She zipped up her leather portfolio, walked past his kneeling form without a single backward glance and opened the boardroom doors. Outside, little Leo looked up, his silver-flecked eyes shining as he took his mother's hand. Julian watched from the floor as the heavy frosted glass doors closed between them, realizing that he had saved his company, but the greatest war of his life, the war for his family's love, had only just begun. Oh, the emotional weight of this chapter is absolutely paralyzing. Evelyn has been utterly ruined. Julian is down on his knees experiencing the absolute pinnacle of poetic justice. And Maya is standing strong as an unbreakable queen protecting her son. What an incredibly powerful confrontation. Can Julian ever hope to prove to Leo and Maya that he can be a real father? Or has his pride cost him his family permanently? Drop a comment below right now and let me know your thoughts. Are you team forgiveness or team let him suffer? If your heart is racing and you need to see the next chapter of this emotional warfare, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button and turn on your notification bell right now. Part 5. The Gatekeeper of His Heart. The following weeks transformed the capital's media landscape into a feeding chain. Headlines everywhere blasted the dramatic collapse of Montgomery Holdings and the sudden, unprecedented restructuring of Vanguard Tech. But inside his silent penthouse, Julian couldn't care less about the stock market. His focus was entirely on a small, brightly colored folder sitting on his desk, the school schedule and daily routine of Leo Miller. Julian didn't send lawyers. He didn't use his wealth to issue a custody subpoena. He knew that if he forced his way into Leo's life using legal warfare, he would lose Maya forever. Instead, at exactly 3:30 p.m. on a crisp Tuesday afternoon, the powerful billionaire stood outside the wrought iron gates of St. Jude's Elementary School. He had traded his sharp corporate suits for a simple dark sweater and jeans, trying his best to blend into the crowd of waiting parents. When the school bell rang, a flood of children erupted onto the courtyard. Among them, Leo ran toward the gate, his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. He stopped when he noticed Julian standing near the exit, his silver-flecked eyes widening with a curious, innocent recognition. "Hi," Leo said, looking up at him. "You're the man from Mommy's meeting. The one who looked like me." Julian felt his throat tighten so violently he could barely breathe. He slowly knelt down to the boy's eye level, keeping his hands clasped together to hide how hard they were shaking. "Hi, Leo." "Yes, I'm Julian. I know your mommy. Are you a friend of hers?" Leo asked, tilting his head with that exact analytical curiosity Julian possessed. "Mommy said you were a very busy businessman who used to live in our old city." "I was a very foolish businessman," Julian corrected softly, his voice thick with unspilled tears. "I made a lot of mistakes, Leo. But I'm trying to be better now. I wanted to see if I could get to know you." "Leo." A cold, authoritative voice cut through the afternoon air. Maya stood a few feet away, her emerald trench coat draped elegantly over her shoulders. Her eyes flashed with an immediate defensive fire as she saw Julian near her son. She stepped forward, instantly placing herself between them, her protective maternal instincts radiating off her in waves. "Go to the car with David, sweetheart. Mommy needs to speak with Mr. Vaughn for a moment," she instructed gently. Leo nodded, waving a small hand at Julian. "Bye, Julian. Hope you fix your mistakes." As the boy climbed into the safety of the Horizon Global SUV, Maya turned to face Julian, her expression hardening into an impenetrable stone wall. "I told you to stay away from him, Julian. If you think you can bypass me and manipulate a 6-year-old child, you completely underestimate what I will do to protect him." "Maya, please, I'm not trying to manipulate anyone," Julian begged, standing up, completely exposed and defenseless before her. "I'm not using my wealth. I'm not filing for custody. I missed 7 years of his life because of my own stupidity. I want to earn the right to be in the background. Let me pack his lunches. Let me watch his games from the back row. Let me be the father I threw away the right to be." Maya looked at him, her heart heavy as she saw the genuine, agonizing desperation in his eyes. The man who had once ruled her world with absolute arrogance was completely gone, broken down by the sheer weight of his own regret. "You want to be a father, Julian?" Maya asked, her voice cracking slightly as the old memories of the rain threatened to surface. "A father doesn't just show up for the sunny afternoons. He builds the foundation. Next Monday, Horizon Global is hosting our annual charity gala. If you can stand before the entire high society crowd, the same crowd that watched you throw me out 7 years ago, and publicly declare your sins, then maybe, just maybe, I will let you have ice cream with him. Until then, stay behind the gates." She turned and walked away, leaving Julian standing alone as the schoolyard emptied out. The test was set. Maya wasn't asking for an apology in a private room. She was demanding a complete public dismantling of the Vaughn pride. Oh, the stakes are rising to an absolute fever pitch. Maya is testing Julian's resolve in the most brutal way possible, demanding that he humiliate his own family name in front of the exact high society elite that celebrated her exile 7 years ago. Talk about the ultimate trial by fire. Do you think Julian's pride will let him go through with it, or will he falter under the judgment of the upper class? Drop a comment below right now and let me know your thoughts. I want to hear all your predictions. If you are completely captivated by Maya's brilliant, unyielding strength, make sure to hit that subscribe button and smash that notification bell right now. Part 6. The Confession of the King. The Grand Horizon Ballroom was a sea of shimmering crystal chandeliers, flowing champagne, and the elite of high society. Flashbulbs blinded the entrance as billionaires, tech moguls, and journalists mingled under the pretense of charity. But tonight, everyone knew the real main event was the quiet Cold War between Vanguard Tech and Horizon Global. Maya stood near the balcony, looking breathtaking in a backless sapphire blue silk gown. Her hair fell in soft curls over one shoulder, and a single diamond necklace caught the light. She looked like a queen surveying her court. By her side stood little Leo, dressed in a tiny custom tuxedo, completely fascinated by the ice sculptures. "He won't show up, Maya," her lead counsel David murmured from beside her. "Julian Vaughn's pride is his signature trait. Asking him to humiliate his own brand in front of the people who fund his empire? It's corporate suicide." Maya took a slow sip of her champagne, her eyes fixed on the grand double doors. If he cares more about his brand than his son, then he doesn't deserve to know his name. Suddenly, the ambient chatter of the ballroom died down into a breathless, stunned whisper. The heavy oak doors opened. Julian Vaughn stepped into the ballroom. A collective gasp rippled through the upper-class crowd. Julian wasn't wearing his traditional, pristine bespoke suit. He wore no family crest pins, no luxury watch, no armor of wealth. He looked remarkably human, his face pale but completely set with an unshakable, terrifying resolve. He didn't look at the cameras, nor did he greet the investors who tried to catch his eye. His silver-flecked gaze locked entirely onto Maya. Without waiting for an introduction, Julian walked directly up to the center stage, stepping right past the master of ceremonies and taking the microphone. The feedback echoed sharply through the silent ballroom. "Good evening, everyone," Julian began, his voice deep, steady, and carrying across the massive hall without a single tremor. "I know many of you are here tonight to celebrate the success of Horizon Global, or to speculate on the future of Vanguard Tech. But I am standing here tonight to talk about a thief." The crowd murmured, eyes instantly darting toward Maya, expecting a corporate execution. Evelyn's old friends in the front row began to whisper, smiles touching their lips. 7 years ago, Julian continued, his grip tightening on the microphone, a massive data breach occurred at Vanguard. Paralyzed by my own arrogance, blinded by the lies of a manipulative fiancé, and terrified of looking weak, I accused an innocent woman. I publicly disgraced her. I threw her out of my home and into a freezing storm without a single dollar, destroying her reputation because I chose to believe a digital lie over a pure soul. The ballroom went completely, deathly silent. The whispers died. The smiles vanished. "That woman was Maya Miller," Julian said, looking directly at her across the sea of diamonds and tuxedos. "She was my maid. She was the anchor of my home. And she was completely innocent. I am standing before you tonight not as the CEO of Vanguard, but as a broken man confessing his greatest sin. I ruined her life, and in doing so, I cost myself 7 years of watching my son grow up." Julian turned his gaze slightly down, looking at little Leo, whose eyes were wide with shock. "I don't deserve the title of a father," Julian choked out, a raw, visible emotion finally breaking through his billionaire facade as a single tear escaped his eye. "And I don't expect forgiveness from the woman I betrayed. But tonight, before the entire world, I want it known that Maya Miller is the greatest visionary this city has ever seen. Horizon Global didn't succeed because of an inheritance. It succeeded because its CEO possesses a strength and brilliance that I could never hope to match. I am at your mercy, Maya." Julian lowered the microphone, stepped down from the stage and stood perfectly still in the center of the room, completely exposed to the judgment of the high society he had just dismantled for his family. The absolute shockwave of a confession. Julian completely obliterated his own legacy, humbled his family name, and laid his soul completely bare in front of the entire upper-class elite just to prove his devotion to Maya and Leo. The ultimate sacrifice of pride has officially been made. How do you think Maya will react to this massive public apology? Will she finally let Julian take those first steps into Leo's life, or is the damage too deep to repair? Drop a comment below right now and let me know your thoughts. I want to hear all your reactions. Part 7. The Bridge of Ice Cream. The silence in the grand ballroom was so thick it was deafening. Hundreds of high society elites stood frozen, their mouths open, looking between the humbled billionaire in the center of the floor and the sapphire-clad tech queen on the balcony. Julian's confession hadn't just cleared Maya's name, it had completely flipped the power dynamic of the entire city. Maya stood perfectly still, her hand resting gently on Leo's shoulder. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a chaotic storm of old pain and fresh, staggering awe swirling in her chest. She had demanded a public dismantling of his pride, but she hadn't truly believed the untouchable Julian Vaughn would go this far. He had completely destroyed his own armor for them. "Mommy," Leo whispered, pulling on her dress, his silver-flecked eyes wide and confused. "Why is Julian crying? And why did he say he's my daddy?" Maya closed her eyes for a brief second, taking a deep, stabilizing breath. When she opened them, the cold corporate shield had melted away, leaving only the fierce, wise soul of a mother. She looked down at her son, then up at Julian, who was waiting in the center of the room like a man awaiting an executioner's verdict. "Because, sweetheart," Maya said softly, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet room, "sometimes adults get very lost before they find their way back home." She looked directly at Julian, giving him a single subtle nod. It wasn't a total surrender and it wasn't a declaration of love, but it was an opening. A truce. The next afternoon, the glittering ballrooms and corporate boardrooms felt a million miles away. At a small sunlit wooden table outside a quiet parlor on the edge of the city, little Leo sat happily swinging his legs, completely focused on a massive bowl of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Sitting across from him was Julian, still looking slightly out of place in a simple casual shirt, watching the boy eat with an expression of raw, unadulterated wonder. Maya sat a few feet away at a separate table, a cup of tea in her hands, keeping a watchful, protective eye on the interaction. "So," Leo said around a huge spoonful of green ice cream, looking intently at Julian, "if you're my daddy, why weren't you there to help me build my massive Lego fortress last year?" Julian felt a sharp, painful pang of regret hit his chest, but he forced a gentle, honest smile onto his face. "Because I was very blind, Leo. I didn't know where the fortress was being built. But I promise you, from now on, if you ever need someone to hold the instructions or find the missing pieces, I will drop everything to be there. No matter what." Leo stared at him for a long moment, analyzing Julian's face with a maturity that made Julian's heart ache. Finally, the little boy smiled, a bright, dimpled expression that completely shattered the last of Julian's icy exterior. "Hey, but you have to buy the next Lego set. The big starship one." "Deal," Julian choked out, a genuine laugh breaking through his tight throat as he reached across the table, gently bumping his knuckles against his son's small fist. Julian looked up, his silver-flecked eyes meeting Maya's across the patio. The distance between them across the corporate boardroom had been vast, and the scars of the past 7 years were still deep. But as he watched a faint, soft smile finally touch Maya's lips, the same quiet, genuine smile he had fallen in love with when she was just a maid in his mansion, Julian knew the longest winter of his life was finally over. He hadn't just saved his soul, he was finally learning how to build a family. Oh, what an absolutely beautiful, emotionally perfect conclusion to this incredible journey. Julian sacrificed his entire billionaire status and pride to clear Maya's name, and he earned the greatest reward in the universe: a seat at the table with his son and the woman he never stopped loving. Maya proved that a humble heart will always build a far greater empire than arrogance ever could. Thank you all so much for riding along on this intense, high-stakes emotional roller coaster with me. Your incredible support, amazing comments, and passion for these stories are what keep this channel thriving every single day. I want to hear from you one last time. Did Julian do enough to earn his spot at the ice cream table? Was this the perfect ending for Maya and Leo? Drop a comment below right now and let me know your favorite moment of the entire series. If your heart was completely warmed by this story, please do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and turn on your notification bell so you never miss our next massive narrative release. Until next time, stay strong, protect your peace, and I will see you in the next story. Part 8. The Blueprint of Us. The mint chocolate chip ice cream had long since melted into a sweet green puddle, but the conversation at the sunlit patio didn't slow down. With the easy, uncomplicated acceptance of a child, Leo had already moved on from questioning the past to demanding a future. "If we're going to build the big starship," Leo said, wiping a smudge of green from his chin with the back of his hand, "we need a massive flat table. The floor in Mommy's home office is completely covered in tech blueprints." Julian glanced over at Maya. She was still sitting at her separate table, her fingers tracing the rim of her porcelain teacup. The defensive posture she had held for 7 years hadn't vanished overnight, but the sharp, guarded edge in her eyes had softened into something resembling a cautious curiosity. "I have a very large, completely empty mahogany desk in my study," Julian said softly, his eyes locked on Maya as he addressed their son. "In fact, the whole room is quiet. It used to feel like a cage, Leo. But I think it has plenty of space for a starship." Maya set her teacup down with a controlled, deliberate click. She stood up, her emerald trench coat catching the afternoon breeze, and walked over to their table. "Don't get ahead of yourself, Julian. A public confession and a single bowl of ice cream buy you a seat at this table. They don't buy you access to my home, and they certainly don't mean we are moving back into yours." "I know," Julian said instantly, standing up to meet her gaze. He didn't tower over her with corporate authority this time. He stood with his hands loosely at his sides, completely transparent. I don't expect a shortcut, Maya. You spent 7 years building an empire out of nothing while protecting our son. I am fully prepared to spend the next 7 years proving I can be trusted to simply stand beside it. Leo looked between his parents, his sharp little mind picking up on the invisible gravity pulling them together. He grabbed his empty bowl and slid out of his chair. I'm going to ask the ice cream man for a napkin, he announced, completely aware that the adults needed a moment alone. As the little boy trotted off toward the parlor doors, Julian took a single step closer to Maya. The scent of her expensive perfume mixed with the faint, nostalgic memory of the rain, pulling at the severed threads of their past. The board of directors called an emergency meeting this morning after the gala. Julian murmured, a faint, self-deprecating smile touching his lips. They think I've lost my mind. They're terrified the Vaughn brand is permanently damaged. Is it? Maya asked, tilting her head, her CEO persona slipping back on like a flawless glove. High society loves a scandal, Julian, but Wall Street loves a genius. Your stock might take a temporary dip, but a vulnerable billionaire is highly marketable. If you play your cards right, you'll survive. I don't care about the stock, Maya, Julian whispered, his silver-flecked eyes burning with an intense, quiet devotion. Let it crash. Let the empire burn. The only market I care about influencing is right here. I spent years thinking my mother's death meant I had to lock my heart in a vault. But seeing you stand across that boardroom table, seeing what you became despite what I did, it woke me up. Maya looked at him, searching the hard, aristocratic lines of his face for any trace of the old arrogance. She found none. There was only the raw, bleeding sincerity of a man who had finally looked into the mirror and despised his own reflection enough to change it. We aren't the same people we were 7 years ago, Julian, Maya said, her voice dropping into a gentle, melodic whisper. I am no longer the girl who cleans your library in silence, hoping for a glance. And you are no longer the king of an untouchable castle. Good, Julian replied, stepping even closer, his hand hovering just inches above hers on the wooden table, waiting for her permission. Because I don't want the maid, Maya. I want the queen who conquered my market. And I want to earn the right to be her king. Maya looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. She didn't take his hand, not yet. But she didn't walk away either. She simply turned toward the parlor doors where Leo was waving a napkin triumphantly in the air. Monday afternoon, Maya said, her voice full of a quiet, unyielding authority. Horizon Global's development office. Bring the starship instructions, Mr. Vaughn. Let's see if you're actually any good at building things from the ground up. As she walked toward their son, Julian let out a long, shuddering breath, a massive, genuine smile breaking across his face for the first time in nearly a decade. The blueprint of their future wasn't drawn in a corporate boardroom, and it wasn't sealed with a legal contract. It was being written one brick at a time right here in the sun. Oh, the emotional depth of this chapter is absolutely breathtaking. Julian is completely discarding his corporate crown, letting his board of directors panic while he focuses entirely on the only merger that actually matters. His family. And Maya is handling him like the absolute queen she is. Setting boundaries, testing his consistency, and giving him a real chance to build a brand new foundation. Thank you all so much for continuing this incredible high-stakes journey with me. Your incredible comments and passion for Maya's story keep this channel thriving every single night. I need to hear your thoughts right now. Do you think Julian will survive the corporate backlash from his board, or will he walk away from Vanguard Tech entirely to focus on Horizon Global? Drop a comment below and let me know your theories. Part 9. The Sovereign Merge. The glass walls of Horizon Global's executive development wing overlooked the sprawling skyline of the capital, but inside the creative suite, the multi-billion-dollar view was completely ignored. Sprawled across a massive circular white oak table were thousands of gray, blue, and black plastic bricks. Julian Vaughn, a man who normally controlled international data streams with a single stroke of his pen, was flat on his stomach on the plush carpet, desperately searching for a microscopic translucent orange piece. Not that one, Julian, Leo sighed, tapping his chin with a plastic starship wing. That's a thruster stabilizer. I need the weapon energy core. It's flat and shiny. Right, sorry, Julian muttered, a brilliant, relaxed laugh shaking his chest as he shifted on the floor, completely ignoring the fact that his casual designer trousers were covered in carpet lint. Weapon Energy Core. Understood, Commander. Maya stood by the glass door of the suite holding 2 small cartons of apple juice. She leaned against the frame watching the scene unfold in silence. Over the last month, Julian had showed up every single Monday, Wednesday and Friday at exactly 4 p.m. He hadn't missed a single day. He didn't bring expensive media teams, he didn't check his phone during their hours together, and he had patiently endured the chaotic public fallout from his board of directors with an indifferent, serene calm. When the media had tried to paint Maya as a manipulative corporate climber, Julian had personally bought out the front pages of 3 major national financial papers to publish a simple, singular statement. The only manipulation that occurred was my own past ignorance. Horizon Global is the standard. Vanguard is simply trying to keep up. Juice break, Maya announced, stepping into the room and placing the cartons on a small side table away from the plastic pieces. Mommy, look. Leo pointed proudly at the center of the table. A massive, intricately detailed starship stood fully formed, its structure solid, balanced, and perfectly executed. We finished the base skeleton. Julian says the foundation is the hardest part, but if you lock the bricks together right, it never breaks. Maya's gaze drifted from the toy ship to Julian, who was slowly pushing himself up from the floor. He caught her eye, his silver-flecked gaze holding a quiet, deeply respectful warmth that seemed to ask for her approval not as a billionaire rival, but as a man who had finally learned the value of patience. He's right, Maya said softly, her voice missing its corporate armor entirely. The foundation is everything. She looked down at Leo, gently smoothing his dark curls. David is waiting downstairs to take you to your swimming lesson, sweetheart. Go grab your jacket. Okay. Don't touch the ship, Julian. We do the hyperdrive wings on Friday. Leo yelled, already scrambling toward his small backpack and running out the door with a joyous, echoing wave. The heavy glass door clicked shut, leaving the creative suite in a sudden, profound silence. The afternoon sun filtered through the high windows, casting long, golden shadows across the sea of plastic bricks and the 2 tech titans standing among them. Julian walked over to the side table, picking up his jacket from the back of a chair. He's a brilliant kid, Maya. He has your focus. Your stubbornness, too. He has your eyes, Maya replied, stepping closer to the table, her fingers lightly brushing the top of the completed starship. And he's starting to look forward to Mondays more than weekends. Julian froze, his heart skipping a violent beat as he turned to face her. And what about his mother? Is she starting to look forward to Mondays? Maya looked up from the ship, her deep, expressive eyes locking onto his. The 7 years of pain, the freezing rain, the long nights of building an empire from a betrayal, they didn't disappear. But looking at Julian now, stripped of his cold exterior, covered in plastic dust, and entirely devoted to the slow, agonizing process of earning her trust, she realized the past was no longer a cage. It was just the prologue. The board of Vanguard Tech officially proposed a mutual data-sharing initiative this morning, Maya murmured, a small, teasing smile playing on her lips. They think a strategic alliance between our companies would stabilize the market. I don't care about the board's initiatives, Julian whispered, stepping into her space, his breath warm against her cheek as he stopped just inches away, completely waiting for her signal. I care about the CEO. What are her terms? Maya slowly reached out, her delicate fingers wrapping around his lapel, pulling him just a fraction closer. It wasn't a complete surrender. It was the final, beautiful closing of the boardroom table between them. The terms are simple, Mr. Vaughn, Maya whispered, her voice rich with an unshakable, sovereign grace. We don't merge. We build something entirely new. From the ground up. Julian smiled, his hands finally coming up to gently cup her jaw, his thumb wiping away a stray tear of joy as he leaned down, sealing their brand-new foundation with a deep, breathless kiss that tasted like a long-awaited spring. The Maid had conquered his empire, the billionaire had conquered his pride, and together, they had finally built a castle that no storm could ever tear down. An absolutely legendary, magnificent, and emotionally flawless conclusion to this sweeping corporate romance. Maya didn't just get her revenge, she forced the world to recognize her brilliance, while Julian completely transformed his soul to become the father and partner his family truly deserved. The ultimate definition of an empire built on love, humility, and a solid foundation. Thank you all from the very bottom of my heart for completing this incredible multi-part narrative journey with me. Your incredible support, massive engagement, and endless passion are what make this channel the best storytelling community online. I want to hear from you one last time. Did you love how Maya maintained her boundaries while still allowing Julian to earn his happy ending? Drop a comment below right now and let me know your favorite part of the entire series. Before you go, please do me one final huge favor. Smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and turn on your notification bell so you are the absolute first to see our next massive, sweeping romance saga. Live with strength, protect your family's foundation, and I will see you in the next story.